Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something.
Wait a minute, you ain't heard nothing yet.
You're listening to the Live to Create podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/live-to-create. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the official Live to Create podcast coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. I am your host, Shane Almgren, and I am joined today from Fort Lauderdale, Florida by inventor and master guitar maker Larry Lashbrook. Larry founded Lashbrook Guitars in 1964 and builds what many of the top professional guitarists in the music industry consider the finest guitars in the world. He is the inventor of the Naturacoustic piezo bridge, a revolutionary breakthrough in piezo technology that allows a solid-body electric guitar to get rich, full acoustic tones without using a battery or a preamp. All right, Larry, thanks for joining me today. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Shane. It's my pleasure.
So let's start off talking about tell everybody what you do.
What I do? Well, when I do anything, it's usually make and repair guitars.
And there is a technical term for a guitar maker, correct?
Yes, it's called a luthier.
Luthier.
But that's the luthier, yeah, that's a little too high-falutin for me, so I don't usually call myself that.
How long have you been in the guitar making business?
Well, I started in 1964, so I think that's, 50 years?
That is a half a century by my calculations.
Oh, okay, so it's not 50 years, it's half a century.
Half a dozen, six of one way.
Yeah, if you're a guitar maker, you have to develop a sense of humor.
How did you get into that? Were you a guitar player first, or is this a family trade?
Well, I went to this Christian meeting where there were a bunch of people playing guitars. The leader's sister was up in front playing guitar, and she was kind of cute. And, we kind of got to be friends. And she offered to teach me how to play guitar. And I told her, no, I could never learn how to play guitar. I was in clarinet, and I was in band class and clarinet, and I dropped out in the middle of the semester. I just don't think I have any musical ability. She said, well, it's easy. I'll teach you. So I said, well, okay. She says, first thing you have to do is go buy a guitar. So I went to a pawn shop, and I bought a $15 guitar, and the strings were about a half inch off the neck, and there were no light gauge strings back in '64, so these were heavy strings, and after playing this guitar for a while, if I shook your hand, if I used my left hand to shake your hand, I could brush your hand. I got so strong from pushing these guitar strings down. Anyway, after that, I met a guitar maker, and he showed me a few things, and I ended up working on this guitar and putting a truss rod in the neck and winding a pickup for it and so forth, and push come to shove, I finally ended up repairing other people's guitars and then making guitars for other people, and it just developed into a business from that point.
Well, let's back up for a second. Did you modify this first $15 guitar that you got?
Yeah, I modified it several different ways. Improved the neck. I put a truss rod in the neck so I could straighten the neck and get the strings closer to the neck to make it easier to play. And then I made a pickup. Actually, right now I have a pickup winding machine, and I can precisely wind a pickup, but then I didn't know where to get the right wire or anything, so I took apart an old transformer and started winding that around the bobbin, and I ended up making my own pickup. It wasn't very powerful, but it worked.
Most people, when they have an instrument and it doesn't play as well as they think it ought to, they don't have the wherewithal or skill set to start modifying it. So where did that skill set come from?
Well, I learned some of that from a guitar maker in Miami who's died many years ago. But yeah, I learned some of that stuff back in the 60s. how to take the fingerboard off and put a truss rod in the neck. You probably can't buy a guitar today that doesn't have a truss rod in the neck, unless maybe it's a classical guitar. And even some of them have truss rods.
So you didn't start out as like a carpenter building cabinets or spice racks or birdhouses. You just dove right into guitars?
Well, I did a lot of stuff. You know, my dad always had hand tools and stuff, some electric tools, and I always fooled around, you know, making stuff. You know, I was in the soapbox derby for 2 different years, and I made my own soapbox racers. I don't know. I always liked to, you know, to do things with my hands, to build things and modify things and so forth.
So besides guitars, are there any other types of things that you work on now?
Mostly guitars. However, once I got in this business, I built my own machinery. Like I built a carving machine to carve the bodies. It does it automatically. You just put the blank bodies on and hit a switch, and you know, it can carve the front and the back of the body. And then I made a neck carving machine that can carve 2 necks at a time. I think most of these machines are visible somewhere on my webpage,
which is lashbrookguitars.com.
Yes.
For our listeners. So I'm curious, these machines that you use to carve the guitars, is that something you build from scratch, or did you go and find a machine to modify to put your own artistic flair on these guitars that you were creating?
Well, I went and I found some used square steel tubing and welded it up, and, you know, I basically, you know, I went to, you know, junk machinery shops and bought gear motors and various different things. And of course, both these machine carved with routers. I bought the routers new, but pretty much just started welding metal and making things that, you know, put ball bearings on so it could roll along a beam, you know, various things like this. So that, and in fact, I think both my body carving machine and my neck carving machine are somewhere on my website. I think you can see those in operation on my website someplace.
So there's videos there of them at work?
Yes, I believe so.
So one of the things that's funny, I know you're being really modest here, because when I hear somebody say, yeah, I got some stuff from a junkyard and welded it together and threw in some ball bearings and bought a couple new parts, I'm picturing this monstrosity of a Frankenstein machine that's, you know, who knows what it's going to crank out.
Yeah, it cranks out, you know, very precise bodies, and well, you know, both those machines have been working for many years. I've been carving many bodies and necks with those 2 machines, and they do, you know, a great job. You have to sand the bodies after they come off the machine, but that's about it. And then, of course, you have to route the pickup holes in the neck pocket and the control cavity and things like this.
Can we talk about the entire guitar making process from start to finish? Somebody comes in and they give you an order, or you decide there's something that you need to create. What is the first thing that you go out in the shop and do?
Well, I guess you select a piece of wood. Sometimes you have to glue together pieces of wood, and my necks are usually 5-piece necks, so that might be 3 pieces of curly maple and then a couple of strips of veneer in between to, you know, give it some contrast and so forth. And so, you know, I would cut, maybe 3 maple pieces they'd be straight, and then they'd go back to where the headstock goes, and, you know, that would come back at an angle.
Are you thinking about the aesthetics of the guitar when you're picking the wood, or are you just trying to find wood that has a certain thickness or rigidity? What kind of things are you considering?
I've made a few guitars with painted bodies, but usually they have a clear finish so that you can see the wood grain through the finish. So I'm concerned about the wood grain on, I have guitar I'm looking at on the wall. One's a curly maple body, another one's a quilted maple body, but 2 others are just plain basswood bodies. And, I might spray a yellow finish on and then go with a darker finish, shade a darker finish around the edge to give it a shaded or sunburst type look.
So we start off with some wood. We got wood for the body, wood for the neck. You shape those, and then what do we do with them?
Okay, well, we shape them. We cut pickup holes in the bodies and a control cavity and drill holes for the controls. We route for the neck. We glue in almost all of our necks. We made a couple of bolt-on neck guitars. In fact, we're reintroducing, we're making a guitar with a bolt-on neck that I can sell for less than half of the price of the other guitars I make, and it will sound, almost as good, because it's hard to sell guitars in the $10,000 to $30,000 range.
Have you sold any in that range before?
Well, the $10,000 mainly. The $25,000 and $30,000 guitars sitting on my wall. You can see all these guitars on my website. You can go to the guitar gallery and see them, the front and the back and the sides and everything. You can get a good look at all the guitars. So
when you're making, first off, start to finish, how long does it take you to build a guitar from scratch?
The average time from the time somebody orders one is probably a year or more for one of my, expensive guitars.
I mean, that seems like a really long time. What is the most time-consuming part of that process?
Probably sanding and fitting everything so that it's perfect. And we make our own piezo bridges. We make our own pickups. We make our own wooden tail pieces. And we do our own headstocks.
Yeah, you invented a piezo bridge called the Naturacoustic?
That's correct.
And this is a patent-pending sort of revolutionary bridge, is it not?
Yes, it is. And I get orders for those from China, Japan, Australia, and even as far away as Texas.
Can you tell us how it's different than a typical bridge?
First of all, the bridge is entirely made out of rosewood, except for the metal parts like the screws and the piezo elements.
It's made out of rosewood primarily. What are other bridges typically made out of?
Metal, usually some kind of pot metal,
How did you come up with this?
Well, I started fooling around with piezo elements and trying different things on some of the guitars to get that natural sound. And then, of course, there are some companies out there that make piezo bridges for electric guitars, but by and large, they pretty much sound tinny and quacky, and they're not very powerful either. They require a preamp, batteries and so forth. So the one we designed, it's resonant because it's made out of rosewood, but also the way we fit the piezo elements in and so forth, it just gives it a resonance that none of the other piezo bridges have. They tend to sound tinny and quacky. We were reviewed by Guitar World magazine, and in this review, the main interviewer for Guitar World is a guy named Eric Kirkland, and I'm looking at this now. It says, chief among the LTH-1. Huh?
No, keep going. I was going to say I had pulled down that quote from Eric because I wanted to read it back and get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, okay. Well, do you want to read it back, and then I'll...
Yeah, I won't put you on the spot and make you toot your own horn.
Okay.
But
okay.
Yeah, so again, just so everyone understands, Eric Kirkland is from Guitar World magazine, and he says that your marriage of old world craftsmanship and genius invention places your guitars in the elite of ultra high-end instruments.
Yeah, and I'm really glad he said that.
And there's a phrase in there that I want to explore a little bit because it's a personal, it's one of the things that I really like, and that is old world craftsmanship. I love things that are handcrafted, that have, the tender love and care that we just don't see anymore in our, proliferation of IKEA stuff out there.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about why old world craftsmanship is important to you?
Well, First of all, let me be brutally honest, and that is, I think we give the quality of old world craftsmanship, and I mean, there's some very precise things that we have to fit together and make great joints, but basically the bodies and the necks are both carved on machines that we built. So, you know, it's it's a little more modern than, you know, taking out a chisel and a mallet and carving out a body. You know, the things that really, some things don't matter. How you get the shape, whether you do it with a hammer and a chisel or a piece of sandpaper and a rasp, or whether you do it on a machine, you know, that carves it out. Both instruments, if they're the same size and the same shape and the same wood, are going to sound the same.
It sounds like you're really imbuing each guitar. I mean, this is a work of love, and you're not skipping corners. You're not trying to get it done as quickly as possible. I mean, if I'm working on a single instrument for a year or more, I'm pouring every ounce of blood, sweat, and tears I've got into the project. Is that how you kind of look at these things, as your little babies, your pet projects?
Yeah, but on the one hand, if I take a year to build a guitar, I mean, I may be building several guitars in that year, or I may be doing repair work on guitars, so I don't spend 40 hours a week on every guitar. You know, the process ends up maybe taking a year, but the hours that go into it are not like 50 weeks times 40 hours a week.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha. So you're running multiple projects at a time.
Right.
Okay. I want to come back to a few of the quotes, things that people say about you. One of the things that I wanted to point out, I saw this video online and it blew me away. Now, I'm not much of a guitarist, but I know enough about acoustics to know what types of materials are good or bad for sound accommodation. And one of the materials that I'm absolutely positive is terrible is concrete. So if someone told me that they'd built a guitar out of a concrete block or a cinder block, I would advise them to go wait for the drugs to wear off and then go build another guitar. But you've got a video of someone demonstrating one of your bridges played on a freaking cinder block.
Yes.
And it sounds completely amazing. How is that even possible?
Well, because the sound comes from the bridge itself. And I mean, if I put the bridge on a guitar with a more resonant body, you know, it would sound even better. But the fact that I can put it on a concrete block and have it sound like an actual acoustic guitar, it doesn't prove how good this concrete block is, but it does prove how good the bridge is.
So what would it sound like if I took one of those metal typical bridges that they use and I tried to attach that to a concrete block and play it? What would it sound like?
It would sound just like what you think it would sound like.
Beautiful. All right, so I want to give you another quote.
Yes.
Russell Tuttle is a prolific jazz musician. He taught at Berklee College of Music. He's performed with Frank Sinatra, Dionne Warwick, the Buddy Rich Orchestra, the Pointer Sisters, just to name a few. And here's what Russell had to say about your instruments. And I quote, "Larry has invented what I consider to be absolutely the world's best guitar." What do you think when you hear connoisseurs describe your work that way?
I'm glad he said it. If I said it, I'd be arrogant. But if he said it, you know, I'm deeply complimented and deeply appreciative of what he said.
Have you had the opportunity to evaluate, you know, handcrafted guitars from other makers?
Oh yeah.
And be complete, all modesty out the window. I want honesty, modesty out the window. This is strictly honest. Would you agree with his assessment?
Yeah, I think I would. And that's not a very modest thing to say, but
this is the platform to not be modest.
We have put years of blood, sweat, and tears and thought and inventive ideas and tried so many things. And yeah, I mean, I believe we have a world-leading product.
I'm going to throw another name out there. A lot of people If you're a guitarist, you'll know this name. Other people might not, but Yngwie Malmsteen
Right.
is widely regarded as one of the most prodigious guitarists on the planet. He and, I believe, Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, they pretty much set the standard for virtuoso playing back in the 80s.
Right.
Guitarists, in general, pretty much consider Yngwie a genius, and Yngwie, by turn, flat out calls you a genius. I know he's had you modify over 100 guitars for him.
Yep.
How did that relationship develop?
Well, actually, it was kind of funny. You want to know all the details? Here's
All the sordid details, lay them on us.
Okay. Well, a guy named Jeff Horn, who is a big guy. Okay. He came in the shop. He said sheepishly to me, would it be okay if I brought Yngwie here, after he saw the work, and he was like Yngwie's tech and so forth. So, would it be okay if I invited Yngwie over here? I said, sure, why shouldn't it be okay? And he holds his hand up high and he says, well, he's a really big guy and he'll get this far in front of your face, and he put his hand about 2 inches from his nose. He'll say, he'll get this far in front of your face and scream at you. I say, no problem, bring him on. I'll just scream back at him. So anyway, he brought Yngwie over, and actually Yngwie never screamed at me, and, I never had cause to scream at him. And, I guess we just had a mutual respect going. He knew that I wasn't going to take any crap, but he also knew that I could do things for his guitar that he probably couldn't get done elsewhere.
And that relationship started when, in the late 80s, was it?
Oh, history was my worst subject in school. Late 80s, I don't know, maybe.
Well, this is your history, Larry. It's not anything you had to memorize in a textbook.
I know, but I can't. I mean, people ask me how old I am, and I say, well, I was born in 1964. What year is this? I'm ADD to the max. ADD people often make brilliant inventors, but did you know that Albert Einstein used to get lost 3 blocks from his house, and the policeman would have to come find him and lead him home?
I have heard that before.
Okay, so...
Is that a thing that happens? Are you frequently getting lost on your way home?
Oh, no, I have to be at least 6 blocks away. I'm not as smart as Einstein.
Tell me what kind of things people say when they pick up one of your guitars and play it for the first time.
First of all, they don't say anything for a little while, and then they say, they just, can't believe how easy it plays, how good it sounds, how authentic the acoustic sound is from the piezo bridge. They just, and how many sounds and varieties of tones you can get from it. So, yeah, people are very impressed.
Larry, who is a typical client for you these days?
It could be usual. Well, a lot of people, play in bands. They've worn out the frets on their guitar. They just went and bought a brand new guitar, and it's got buzzes all over the neck because the factory never gets the frets even. And so a lot of my clients are people with brand new guitars that want to make them play right. Even if they spent $500, $1,000, or even $2,000 or more, they just don't come set up right. So that's one typical client. Another one.
What is the very first? What's when somebody brings you a new guitar and they want you to fix it? What is the very first change that you'll usually recommend?
I'll say what we need to do is do a fret dress and setup. You have to get, basically, they just don't do this at the factories. Or if they do it, they're not very good at it. Because even very expensive guitars, they come in here, people just bring them in here, do your magic. And so I'll get all the frets even on a plane and rounded, they call that crowned at the top, and polished so they're bright and shiny and look like mirrors, and consequently don't have much friction when you're bending them across the frets, so forth. That's basically, I probably do, half of my work or more would be fret dress and setup, or, replacing frets that have been worn out.
Is changing out the bridge, is that par for the course also? Or do you try to get people using one of your bridges?
First of all, on like an archtop guitar, it's pretty easy to put one of my bridges on there, or, on a Les Paul, or, any kind of a guitar that has a Tune-O-Matic bridge, is kind of natural to just take their bridge out, because the studs for the bridge are the exact same spacing as the ones on mine. So you can just take the studs out and put that in. You have to drill a hole for the wire to go down, into the control cavity. But yeah, I get quite a bit of those. And I send quite a bit of those out all over the world. People order them, and I don't remember getting more than maybe one report over several years of somebody that was having trouble making it work, guitar, or fitting it to their guitar.
And I assume you took care of it and made them happy?
Well, I told them what to do. I mean, if they're in China or Australia or, even Texas, I don't go service the guitar, and they're not going to bring it to me, but I try to help them solve their problem over the phone. And if they're not handy with tools, try to recommend they find somebody that's, a craftsman that can do this. But none of it's very hard. It's a pretty simple installation.
Who is the most memorable or one of your favorite clients to work for?
Wow. Well, the most famous would probably be Yngwie Malmsteen. Probably my favorite client of all time would be Russell Tuttle, because he and I like the same kind of music. We play jazz, chord melodies, and so forth. And he made some, he called my guitar the Trojan horse because of all the sounds hiding in it. And he also said that it had played more in tune than any guitar he ever played. And talked about the jazz tone, and you could get an authentic jazz tone and any other kind of tone.
I want to spend a few minutes talking about the business of creativity. So I'm really curious, people that are successful at both, they're successful business people, they're also successful creators. I'm interested in what it takes to do that. And, one of my first questions is always, are you a night owl? Are you an early riser? Do you get up to open your shop doors when normal people do? Or you stay up till 5 a.m. working and sleep till noon? How does that work?
I suspect that you already know the answer to that.
I didn't quite until you phrased it that way.
Yeah, I can be up all night working on a guitar or whatever. I always try to make sure I'm up by the crack of noon.
That's a noble aspiration. So that leads into my next question was, did you keep the shop open? Like, did you work 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, and then call it a day and say, I have to make time for my regular personal life, social life, relationships? Or did you just get on a kick and just go until you felt like being done?
Well, at times I've just gone, 80 hours a week or more, but at other times, I put in less than 40. I have other things to do or whatever. Yeah, I'm not a scheduled person. If you ask what do I usually do, I would say nothing. There's nothing that I do usually. What do I do? What do I sporadically do?
That's beautiful. So what's the vision for Lashbrook Guitars going forward? Are you going to shut the doors at some time? Are you going to keep doing this until your golden years?
I don't know when my golden years are going to be, but I was born in 1946, so I think am I turning 80 this year or 70? I'm not good at math. I think I'm turning 70.
Well, either way, you're past retirement age, and you're most definitely not retired.
No, I even built a building that I'm doing this in. With help from my friends.
The plot thickens. So you built the building, you built the machines that make the guitars. It sounds like you've done all of this, top to bottom from scratch.
Yeah. I had help. I had a lot of friends helping me build the building, and my dad and my brother and my friends. And it's funny that I started building the building. This is like a 5,000 square foot, 2-story building. It's 50 by 52 stories. And I started the building in 77, the year that my firstborn son was born, and I finished the building in 1980, the year my second-born son was born.
So it's been in the family their entire lives.
Yeah.
And did you enlist them to help? Did they learn how to make guitars?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they've worked with me in the business, and they both play guitars. And
so, what is a piece of advice if one of your sons, or actually if anybody came to you and said they wanted to do what you're doing? They wanted to start a business making guitars, or it could be anything, making furniture, carving surfboards. I don't care. What one piece of advice would you give someone who wanted to do that?
Other than don't.
Well, that'll lead into the next question perfectly.
No, I really, honestly, with all the hassles and whatever, the problems and the frustrations, I would tell everybody, almost everybody, I would say follow your dream.
What cautionary tale would you tell someone who's thinking about doing this?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I wouldn't tell anybody to follow their dreams if I thought they were an axe murderer.
I'm glad to hear that. That's
okay. But no, if somebody wanted to get into the guitar business, well, they'd have to love it. They'd probably have to be willing to work late hours, and there's a lot of people, that repair guitars and so forth, that I don't know if they're too impatient to do quality work or just incapable of doing quality work, but there are a lot of butchers out there, and I wouldn't want to encourage anybody to go butcher guitars. There are also a lot of good craftsmen, and if you told them to go do something else, they wouldn't, because they love what they do, and they're doing what they love.
So don't be an axe murderer and don't butcher people's guitars. I would say that's a very non-controversial platform to stand on.
Yeah.
Well done there, Larry. Let me ask you this. If you trained a person, somebody worked under you and decided they wanted to take over your business and buy it from you, and you could go live on a sailboat, whatever, how much of what they needed to do to be successful is something that you could teach them, and how much of your business success comes from something that is intrinsically yours that you couldn't teach?
Well, okay. I mean, I guess I have intrinsic values and skills, but there's a lot of people that have skills. There are a lot of people that could work carefully and so forth, and they would just have to learn the right procedures and be patient enough to, you're not working on a doghouse or, even a standard construction job. You're working on something that's pretty delicate and precise, and, you need to find somebody that has the personality to do that.
What would you say are the key skill sets? Is it having a good ear, or is it having surgeon precision fingers?
Well, let's say it this way. Surgeon precision fingers are, you probably don't do an hour's worth of surgeon precision stuff a week. I don't know. Maybe you do. But there are ways you can be precise without having, surgeon's nerves and hands. There are ways that you can set up jobs so that things are going to go right rather than wrong. Like if you're going to cut a piece of plywood and you just draw a line on it and you just take your skill saw and saw across it, that line's going to be not that straight. But if you take a piece of plywood and you nail a straight board onto it and guide your saw against that board, you're going to have a straight line. It's not a difference in skills. It's just a difference in the care that you take and knowing what to do to get that straight line.
Just an extra step of thoroughness, huh?
Yeah.
So you alluded a few minutes ago to the frustrations that are inherent in this business. Can you give us an example?
Well, since the work is so precise, you just have to be extra careful, and every once in a while you make some kind of mistake that you got to patch up. I haven't had too many of those, but just to be so careful that you don't do any damage to anybody's guitar. And then, sometimes you've got to, like I've got a guitar in here now, an old Gibson guitar, and it's got bracings loose and on the back of the guitar. So I'm basically going to have to take off that plastic binding and remove that back, and re-glue those bracings, and then glue the back on, and glue the binding back on, and try to make it look like it never came apart. I probably won't make it look like it never came apart, because there's too many little chips of wood that can come out when you're taking that binding off. There's too many things. So and before I take a job like that, I tell the client, some chips and so forth may be unavoidable here. I'll do the best I can, but when I'm doing frets, I know how to get them exactly even. But when you're taking stuff apart that's glued together, slivers can come out and so forth. And you can spend a lot of time trying to slice those slivers off of one piece of wood and glue it right onto the other piece of wood so you can't see anything. Fortunately, that's not the majority of my work. You can get jobs like that you just want to tear your hair out.
One of the things that I'm hearing from you over the course of this conversation is sort of the love and the care and the baby gloves handling that you treat people's guitars with. I can tell they hold a special place for you. What does it do when you're watching the news and you hear about something like American Airlines breaking somebody's guitar, or you see them chucking guitars out on the tarmac when they're coming out of planes?
Oh, well, I had, I'll tell you from personal experience. I had this girl. In fact, I just read her comment. I went through all my rag magazines and read all the comments from people that wrote to me, and this one girl told me that I had restored her life back to the way it should be. She took her grandfather's guitar. Her grandfather had been dead for years. Her grandfather's classical guitar, and it went on the airlines, and it was smashed into hundreds of pieces. And she brought that back to me to put together, and then after I charged her a considerable amount of money to do that, but she wrote me a letter back saying that I'd brought her life back to the way it should be. That guitar meant so much to her, and she was so happy, that I was able to resurrect that guitar.
So you were a guitar healer as well as a guitar maker,
I guess.
Well, Larry, we've come to the end of all the questions that I've got written down. Now we come to the final 14. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
All right. So here we go. If your job only paid the bills and nothing more, would you still continue to do it?
Well, that's about what it's been doing for over the years, so I've continued to do it. The answer to that is yes.
What talent or skill do you not have that you wish you did?
Related to my business or in my life?
In your life. Pick one.
Okay, well, let's see. One thing is I'd like to be able to read music. I never bothered to read. I, play jazz, by ear and so forth. But it would have been nice if I'd taken time to read music and I could just pick up a sheet of music instead of experimenting to find out how to play the song.
Fill in the blank. I am a success if I
am honest and I put in my best effort and if I follow my God.
Fill in the blank again. I am a failure if I were dishonest,
I'd be a failure. If I were careless and sloppy, I'd be a failure. If I didn't stand for the truth and stand for, maybe people that were underdogs or whatever.
What is the single best piece of advice that you followed to get to where you are today?
I don't know. I think don't be in a hurry. Take your time. Think it through. Be careful. Be accurate. as it applies to business, I think Jesus said it in the Golden Rule, if you would have men do unto you, so do you to them.
What's a piece of advice someone gave you that you're glad you ignored to get to where you are today?
Oh, I don't know. Things that go along the lines of, well, don't worry about that, just throw a little buddy in it, or, people that suggest quick fixes for things that never end up to be permanent fixes. Just quickest way to get something done, and this would be things like I've worked in cabinet shops. I worked for Chris Craft. I worked for, I've worked in other places, but a lot of times people would try to give me, just hurry up, just be worried about this. And I don't know, I'm just not built to do that.
What character trait do you like best about yourself?
Well, let's see, that would have to either be honesty or determination.
What character trait do you like least about yourself?
Messiness, disorganization.
Fill in the blank here. I believe every child should have the opportunity to
follow their dreams.
If you could suggest one piece of self-improvement that everyone on earth would adopt, what would it be?
Tell the truth. Be honest.
If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
I'm not too good at fantasy questions. If I could have any superpower, I don't know. Maybe a superpower of persuasion, if that would count.
If you could have dinner with anyone alive or dead, who would it be?
Jesus of Nazareth.
An hospitable nearby planet has been discovered, and you have been recruited to help colonize it. You can take any 3 items that you wish. What are they? I
guess, I'd have to have my Bible. I'd have to have a guitar. I guess some kind of communication system that I could communicate back with Earth.
You have just won a Lifetime Achievement Award in your field, so give us your acceptance speech.
I'd be up all night writing this. I would just mention the people that have helped me in the business. Do I start out with Sandy Lindstrom, who taught me how to play guitar? My dad, who taught me how to work with my hands, build things, and, how to be creative. There's so many people I'd want to. I got a great wife now. I've had great parents, great brother and sister.
Well, Larry, congratulations. You are no longer on the hot seat. That's all I've got for you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You did great.
I did?
You did. You passed. Well, Larry, I want to thank you one more time for joining me today. It has been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, and the pleasure's been all mine. You have a great evening.
Same to you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Once again, that was master guitar maker Larry Lashbrook. For more information on Larry, Lashbrook Guitars, and his revolutionary Naturacoustic piezo bridges, please visit www.lashbrookguitars.com. I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today. You are listening to the Live to Create podcast, and this is Shane Ongren reminding you to dream big, be inspired, and live creatively.